Welcome to APS301, Improve Code Quality with Amazon Q Developer. My name is Daniel Begimer. I'm a Senior Security Engineer in Global Services Security. I've been in AWS for over 5 years now, based in New York City. In my day-to-day job, I'm working with customers on streamlining security incident response operations and also leading the application security technical field community. So working closely with customer service teams and field teams on AppSec. Today I'm here with Brian Beach.
And hi everyone, my name is Brian Beach. I'm the tech lead for our next-gen developer experience community. So I work with all of our developer tools and focus on developers. I am based out of North Carolina, and I've been with Amazon for just over 10 years.
Thank you, Brian. So in the next 60 minutes, we're going to dive deep into Amazon Q Developer. This is a 300-level session, so we're going to be technical. We're going to show you CLI, code, demos that's based on real-world scenarios. We're going to start with a quick introduction about Amazon Q Developer. Then we're going to dive deep into each phase of the software development lifecycle. And on each phase, we're going to show you an example of a challenge, a scenario, a persona, and how we can handle it better using Amazon Q Developer. We're going to start with plan and design. How you can threat model an application before you even start building it. How you make sure that you're building it the right way, working backwards from your security requirements. Then we're going to discuss the develop phase. Brian is going to show you how Amazon Q Developer can work alongside of your developers to write a more secure code, to be more productive, to understand your code better, to generate documentation and unit testing. Then we're going to touch the build and test, how Amazon Q Developer can integrate into your CI/CD pipelines, your GitHub, GitLab repo, generate code based on PFRs, product feature requests, or run automated reviews in order to identify security issues in your code. Then we're going to touch monitor and respond. You have your application already developed. It's running in production. You have a security event. How you can streamline those security operations. How you can use Amazon Q Developer to work alongside your SecOps team or incident response teams in order to react to security events. And in the end, we're going to touch upgrade and harden. You have your application already running there. You have a new vulnerability, a new security issue. You have a new requirement to make a major upgrade. How Q and the transform capability can really help you to do this in a more easy and efficient way. So as I mentioned, we're going to start with a quick introduction, couple of slides about Amazon Q Developer and our GenAI stack. So maybe if you can raise your hand, please, if you ever used Amazon Q Developer before. All right, so I see some Q Developer users. This is our GenAI stack. All right, we have 3 different layers, and each layer represents different type of services that we provide to customers. Starting from the bottom is all of our infrastructure level services. So Amazon SageMaker, the GPUs, high performance compute, those can help you to build and train your own models. Give you flexibility, and it's a cost-effective and scalable solution that you can use. Then you have Amazon Bedrock, our fully managed service that can serve you foundation models of our models and our partners, which you can integrate directly into your applications. And then we have the applications that can help you to boost productivity. Amazon Q Business that can help you to get insights and operations into your business. And Amazon Q Developer that is very focused on the software development lifecycle, which we are going to focus on in this session. So what is Amazon Q Developer? So Amazon Q Developer can help you to run productivity, to develop code faster and more secure. It can work alongside your security engineers, your software developer engineers, your DevOps engineers, and really help to run operations and also generate code and scan it for security issues. We have Amazon Q Developer is available through the Q CLI, so you can run it from the CLI, from the IDE, or from the console. And it also has agentic capabilities, so it can run autonomous actions for you based on the task that you will provide to it. And we're going to see some examples later today. Amazon Q Developer is also trained and integrated well with AWS. So he can be your AWS expert in any services and things that you want to build on AWS. Now, this is a security conference. We need to talk a bit about the security features and capabilities of Amazon Q. So when you develop with Amazon Q, you have full ownership of your code. The code is yours. And when you use the Pro tier, we're not using anything for training data, etc. The code stays yours and stays secure. We have an enterprise SLA, 99.9, and we also saw compliance. So similar to other services and other solutions that we have, we're insisting on the highest standards when it comes to security, and it's relevant when we talk about Amazon Q as well. So we really just had a quick overview about Amazon Q. I want to dive deep directly into the different phases of the software development lifecycle, starting with the plan and design phase. All right, and we're going to start with our first scenario. We have our software developer, and he has a task. He needs to build a new application. Let's say, for this example, a new CSV processing application. And he has a long list of security requirements. Now, they can be maybe centralized in a wiki. In our case, we're going to have a wiki, a Confluence wiki that has the guidelines from the CCOE. But the software developer need to work with the security teams or work with the wiki in order to really identify what he needs to build, which services are allowed, what are the best practices, what are the organizational requirements. And we're going to see really how Amazon Q can help us to streamline this process. So you can see here that I have my Confluence wiki. So I have my wiki with some security requirements. So you can see the allowed services that are allowed in the organization, the blocked services that I shouldn't use. And you can see some standards. So what are the CloudFormation standards, how services needs to be configured, etc. So we have those requirements defined already in our wiki. I'm going to jump into QCLI, and I integrated the MCP of Atlassian in this QCLI, so I can start by asking which tools are available. So I'm getting a list of the available tools, and one of them is Atlassian. Means I can now get pages for my wiki. I can also write pages to my wiki. So I have this integration with QCLI and my wiki page and the security requirements. Then Q asks me, OK, what's next? What we can do? So I'm asking Q, hey, if you can go ahead and review the CCOE requirements, make sure you are aware to them before I even start to plan and build my application. So Q will go and fetch the relevant information from my wiki pages. Just going to give it a moment. And after a while, we can see the Q really reviewed the pages, and you understand which services are approved, which services are not approved. So he had this context. He can understand now better my security and organizational requirements. And now when the developer starting to run the development itself of this new solution, Q will have that context in mind. Next, I'm going to ask Q to really develop the application for me. So I want a CSV application, to store CSV file, S3, SNS, Lambda. So I'm gonna input it into Q. After a moment, you can see that Q will generate a CloudFormation template for me, but it's also saying that, hey, you're using a service that is not allowed. You want to use SNS topic, and this is not one of the approved service. This is a blocked service. So Q will automatically identify that and also suggest a replacement. So in this case, he picked SQ and generate for me the full CloudFormation template based on the application that I wanted to build with the different requirements. OK, I build the application, and it really looks good. It's what I wanted it to do. I tested it, it's working, and I'm aligned with the security requirements. I need to write documentation, right? Who likes to write documentation? So we can use Q really to also automate this phase. So since like we also integrated again with our wiki, we can not just generate documentation based on the solution, we can also push it back as a wiki page. So I'm going to ask you to do it for me, and probably going to take a couple of moments. And then in the end, I expect to see like a wiki page with my new app, with the relevant documentation, how to deploy it, how is the architecture, and how the different components are configured. Here we go. So I hope this like really help you to get like some ideas about how you can really integrate Q with your knowledge bases, with your wikis, whenever you store your security requirements, and really it can really help to build in a more secure way, working backwards from your organizational and security requirements, and help to bridge the gap between the security and the developers. I'm going to give another example scenario. This time, we're talking about threat modeling, threat analysis. We have a security engineer that comes to a new application that has been developed by the development team. They want to deploy it maybe to production. And we want to understand what are the security risks that we have there. Right? So like as a security engineer, I can now like dive into the code base and try to understand the inputs and outputs and try to understand what can get wrong there. But I can use Q that will help me to achieve that in an automated way. So now we're going to show you like Q from the IDE, not the CLI as last time. So I have my Flask here, like an example application. And I already created a prompt for threat analysis. So you can customize and create your own prompts and store them in markdowns and use them against your projects. With Q, I can also pick the specific context. So I can like give Q the whole workspace, or I can give a specific file or a specific directory. In this case, I just picked like the specific project for Flasker. And we can see that Q ingested all of the project files. And here you can see right now my markdown with my customized prompt. So I'm asking Q, hey, I want you to create a threat analysis. I want you to include severity. You should include also like mitigation strategy. Please use stride. And give me the list of the evaluations. And give me the list of results in this specific format. So Q will go and will run the action against the context that I gave it. And in a couple of moments, I expect to see like here you go. I can see like the list of severities, high severities, medium severities. So I can see some SQL injections there and improper handling of credentials. So Q identified those security risks. And he also created a markdown for me with a list of the security finding. So I hope this, again, like help you to get more familiarity with how you can create custom prompts with Q and how you can run like threat modeling with Q and help to streamline the security process with the development process. All right, so we planned and designed our application. We made the threat modeling. We walked from the security requirements. And the next phase, we want to develop it maybe further. I want to hand over to Brian that will walk through about how you can use Q really to streamline the development processes in your organization.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so we're going to shift gears a little bit here. I want to move from the planning phase of the SDLC into the developer phase. Daniel's a security guy. I'm more of a developer. That's my background. And so I'm going to look at this from the developer persona. We're going to talk a little bit about all the things that generative AI can do throughout the software development lifecycle to help the developer. And I'm going to play the role here of a new team member. So I'm coming on to the team working on the same application that Daniel showed you at the end, that Flask R application. And I'm new to the team. So I also have a little learning to do about Flask, about Python maybe, and about the application itself. And I want to then look at all the things that I can use generative AI for throughout the entirety of, first, the inner loop of the SDLC when the developer's iterating, and then the outer loop when we take that into the DevSecOps tool and the CI/CD pipeline. So I'll start first with the inner loop and the developer persona. And I really want to focus here on how we can write code faster, of course. But in all honesty, I think we over-index a little bit on this idea of generative AI helping you just write code faster. Right? It's also about writing better code, and it's about raising the overall quality of the project itself. And there's been a lot of studies about this. I'm sure you've seen numbers. What we're seeing is we think of developers as sitting in front of a keyboard writing code all day. But that's not actually what they do. Right? They spend a lot of their time doing undifferentiated heavy lifting. Studies are showing that developers are only spending about an hour a day actually writing code, meaning they're spending 7 or more hours, depending on how long your day is, doing other things like writing documentation, going through planning and learning new concepts, unit tests, code reviews, all of that undifferentiated heavy lifting. So I want to look at all of that too, and all the ways we can use these tools, not just to write code faster, but to do the rest of the things that are part of that larger inner loop of the SDLC. So Daniel showed this Flask R application already in the last piece of this. If you're familiar with Flask, you've probably seen the Flask R application. This is the app that you build in the tutorial. It's a really simple microblogging application where you can just add entries to this hypothetical blog. If you haven't ever done Flask development, Flask is just a lightweight web framework that allows you to set up routes and configure how URLs map into your project. And we'll see that in a moment. So again, I'm going to play the role now of a new developer. And I've just joined this team. And my job is to add delete functionality to this application. By the way, the Python typo is my own. Q did not do that. Daniel waited till the last minute and told me about that only like a couple hours ago, so I didn't have time to fix it. And I've done this demo before and not noticed the fact that Python was spelled wrong, so I hang my head in shame. So before we get going, let's just take a quick look at what this application looks like. So I'm going to log in here. Again, this is just a simple sample application. I'll log in, and once I do, I'm just going to add a new entry to this blog. And an entry just has a title and a little bit of text that goes with it. And so I'll go and add a new entry. You see it show up at the bottom. If I added more entries, they would just show up in a list at the bottom. And notice that there's no delete. Right? There's no delete, there's no modify. If you actually did this project and went through the whole tutorial, you would eventually add those capabilities. But I started about midway through. So my job is to come in and do that. And so I'll jump in, right? This is the Python Flask application. I'm going to play the role of someone who's new to this. I'll pretend that I've never done Flask before, so I have some learning to do. You're probably already seeing some security issues. I know this is a security conference. We're going to do some dev stuff, and we'll come back to security in a minute or two. But I'm going to start with just some mundane developer tasks. It probably stands out to you that there are some security issues like that hard-coded password right out of the gate. You also saw the analysis that Daniel did a moment ago. There's a lot of problems with this. It's just a sample app. So we'll have plenty of security issues to fix as we go. But the first thing I want to do is I just need to learn. And so GenAI is excellent for helping me learn. I'm just going to come into Q here and ask it, hey, what is Python Flask? Right? I'm new to this technology. As a developer, we're new to stuff all the time. And so rather than going out to Google or Stack Overflow to learn this, I can just come in here and Q gives me a nice summary and says, oh, it's a lightweight web framework, and gives me a page or two of documentation with some follow-up links. If I do know Python, I might not know the project. The other thing I can do is just come in and say, hey, can you explain this code to me? Help me come up to speed on this project more quickly. And Q comes through and says, yeah, let me break this down for you. I'll walk you through this method, help you understand what's happening. Okay? And this is really powerful. As simple as that demo was, this is hugely helpful when you are joining a new project, learning a new technology. And I might iterate on this, right? I might spend 30 minutes going back and forth and talking to Q about this project to help me understand it before I get going. And then after some time, once I'm comfortable, the next thing I'm going to do is now it's time to actually start making a change, to go and implement this delete. And before I jump into the demo, I just want to talk about the evolution over the past couple of years. Right? We launched this product originally 3 years ago, and it started with autocomplete. I start typing, and it starts auto-completing for me, giving me the next few lines of code. And then that 2 years ago evolved into chat, and we moved the whole thing into the chat experience. And a lot of what you had to do as a developer or as a user was focus on getting the right stuff into context, having the right tab open at the time, and giving it the right contextual clues to help you. This year, it's like the next iteration. We've moved into this kind of agentic chat mode that has a lot of autonomy and is able to make decisions on its own. It goes into kind of thinking or reasoning mode and figures out what to do on its own. So as I start here, just to contrast, in the old days, I might just start typing. And the more I type, the more accurate this suggestion would get. And I would implement delete this way. But that's the old way. The way we're doing it now is I'm just going to come in here and ask Q to help me implement delete and tell it I want you to do the HTML, the SQL, and the code. I want you to do all of that. And you can see I don't have to have the right file open. If you notice here, Q's just looking through the project right now and finding the files that it wants to read. It's not my responsibility to figure that out anymore. Once it does, it now starts the task of writing code. And the first thing it's going to do here is make some suggestions for HTML. So it comes in and says, OK, I'm going to add this delete button into the HTML. Notice there's a little confirmation there. It also gives me a diff each time it does this, so I can review it. There's still a human in the loop making decisions before I commit things. Then it continues along, and it says, OK, the next thing I'm going to tackle is this SQL query. I'm going to need the ID. I didn't need that when I was just displaying it, but now I need the ID to call the delete statement later. That looks good, so I'll commit that, merge that in. And then it continues along a little bit. Now it's actually writing the delete functionality, adding that capability in. And you can see here, I'll look at the diff again. Now it's actually done the original job, right? Add the delete capability in. So in the old days, I had to sort of go to each of those files and start typing, and it would finish. Now it's taking control and just doing all of this for me. And at the end of each step here, it gives me a nice summary. This is an absurdly simple fix that I'm doing here. But in a more complicated one, this summary is really good to understand the reasoning and all the thoughts that the model had along the way to get here. So let's just go. You can see now, coming back into the app at the bottom, I have a delete button. Python's still spelled wrong, but the delete button works. And I can come in here and delete an entry. Right, so Q's now come in and implemented this whole thing for me, gone through all of the different components of the application. First of all, found the right pieces of the application, and then went in and implemented the change for me across multiple files. So the scope's grown a lot in the last year. Now, it's really easy to assume at this point that we've kind of done the work, right? We've done the job. My job, the thing that I was asked to do, was to come in and make this change. At some level, I've completed the task, mission accomplished. But this is only a small piece of it, right? We said developers only spend about an hour a day actually doing the part where they write the code and make the change. There's all of this downstream, undifferentiated heavy lifting that I now have to do. This is the part that I want to do. The rest of the task is the stuff I don't want to do. I have to go update documentation. I have to go write unit tests. I have to do a code review, or somebody else has to do a code review anyway. And so we've really focused with Q on enabling all of that, making all of those other things as easy as we can. And that's the next part that I want to show you. So the next thing I'm going to do here, coming back into the code, is I'm going to go update the documentation. And so I could just go into the README file and start making changes, but we've made these really simple experiences. They all start with a / that invokes this agent. And I'm just going to say / dev. I could create a new README file. I have one. I'm just going to say update it. I could also let Q figure out what changed. It could look at the project history, but I'm going to tell it what I want it to do. I'll just say, hey, can you add the remove method that we just created into the docs? And it's going to go now, and just like it did before, it's on its own scanning through my project and figuring out what it needs to know, looking at the different components, looking at the different files, and figuring out what's changed in this project and how it differs from the README file. Now it's summarizing those changes, it's looked through it all, and finally generating the documentation, updating the docs for me. And just like you saw in the previous example, it's going to give me a diff so that I can merge that or review it before I merge it. And of course, at any point in this, I could ask for changes if I wasn't happy with something. But this looks good, right? It's added the delete capability in. This is a pretty simplistic change, so of course the documentation update's not terribly profound. And finally, I'm just going to open that in preview. Q did generate this README file originally, the one that we just edited. I just want to give you a sense of what it looks like. It's pretty thorough. We got the whole project structure. We've got the installation, configuration instructions, the testing, debugging instructions are all in here, the data flow, how the overall application works. So this wasn't a huge change. This wasn't a complicated update to the docs. The point is, though, we're trying to make this really easy. I'm sure everyone has worked with a developer who loves making the changes but never updates the docs. And of course, you fast forward a few months and the docs are wildly out of sync with the changes that are being made to the application. We all know that person. I think everyone probably can conjure a vision of an individual that never does this well. I know I can. So we're making that as easy as we can. The next thing that I want to do, again, focusing on code quality, is I want to go and update the unit tests. And similarly, you have probably watched over time as the code coverage just naturally declines in your projects. And what I usually see with developers is they neglect this process over and over again until eventually you fall below some threshold that breaks the build in the CI/CD pipeline, right? Usually maybe 80%, and if you get code coverage under 80%, that breaks the build. Then we put something in the backlog to go write some unit tests. We derail the whole team for a few days while they bring the code coverage back up to maybe 90%, and then that process repeats. So just like we did with docs, we're trying to make this really easy with another one of these agents. So again, I'll come in here, / to bring up that list, and I'm going to say test this time. I want to go and write some tests. And so it's going to do kind of the same process now. It's going to go through and look over the project. It's going to scan through the files. It found the remove entry method that I asked it to update. And now it's going through and generating tests. It's going to generate 3 of them, so you'll see this in 33, 66, 100%. And just like before, it'll come back with a diff for me to review so that I have an opportunity to look it over before we commit this into the project. There it is. So I'll click on this, and you can see here, it went through and added a few imports into the project. And if we scroll down, here's a couple of tests that it wrote. The first is the success case. Make sure that it's actually working as it's supposed to. But then it's also wrote some defensive negative cases to say, oh, what happens if if the user's not logged in? Okay. So all of that's looking good. I'll go and just merge that in. I'm pretty happy with the work that it did. Right, so kind of coming back to the big picture, I like writing code. The first part was the part I want to do. These other steps before I commit are the things I don't want to do. And we're really trying to focus on making Q great and making those really easy for you so that you can do the stuff you want to do. So at this point in the journey, I'm just about ready to go and check in my changes. Right, it's time now to go and commit my changes, push them into the CI/CD pipeline. And I know the first thing that's going to happen when I do that is it's going to kick off a code review. And one of my peers is going to go review this thing. Now, I'm new to this team, remember. I don't want to make a fool of myself. I've already seen a few issues in there. I don't want to add new issues into this. So the last of these agents that I want to show you in the inner loop is the code review capability, which, as the name implies, is going to go and do a code review across my project. So before we go and do that, let me talk a little bit about the different capabilities, because really 3 different things are going to happen as part of this demo. The first 2 are security related. The first of these is composition analysis. It's going to look over my project and all of the OSS dependencies and look for known vulnerabilities in those, flag those for me. This capability we essentially borrowed from Inspector. So if you've gone through sessions on Inspector, right, we're using their capabilities, their detectors for this. This isn't new. This isn't something new we wrote. This is proven. This has been used in production for years. And so this is already pretty mature right out of the gate. The next thing we're going to do, the next security-related thing, is we're going to do static analysis. So we're next going to go through, scan through the code, and look for known vulnerabilities in the code. Look for patterns, things like that hard-coded password that we've seen a couple of times here. This will pick up lots of things, SQL injection and a bunch of others. again, we've borrowed this from, in this case, Code Guru. So Code Guru has been around for a while as an AWS service for doing static analysis. They've invested really heavily over the last many years in security detectors. And so we're borrowing those detectors. Again, this is a really mature offering. I'll show you some stats on that in a minute. Those two are security related. The third thing that's going to happen is we're just going to ask the large language model to play the role of a code reviewer. Say, pretend you're my peer and review my code for me. Make suggestions about readability. This is nested too deeply. This is going to be hard to maintain. All the things that I would normally get from a peer. Before I jump into the demo, there's a link at the bottom here for blog posts. But these are stats from the code review service as it stacks up against other tools. And generally, we're outperforming a lot of the publicly benchmarkable tools, those others that have published data. And there's a nice blog post that kind of breaks that down and shows you some comparisons about how we're performing relative to those. OK, so with that, I'm back into that same application. And I'm going to come in. This time, of course, I'm going to go and run the review. OK, so I'll come in here, and I'll do / again. And I'll run review. And I have the option this time, do I want to do the current file or the entire workspace? I'm going to say just scan the entire workspace. Even though I didn't touch all those files, I know there's issues in there, and I want to go check them out. So it's running those scans. By the way, the default behavior is that it is always scanning the current file. We're always checking over that current file and providing feedback to you. In this case, I've intentionally disabled that so that all the issues roll in at once and we look at them. But the default behavior is that we're always looking at the current file, and you opt in to look at it at the project level. So just like in other examples, this has now grabbed my entire application, Q's deciding what it wants to look at, and after, what was that, maybe 15, 20 seconds, it comes through and provides a bunch of findings. This is a sample app, so not surprisingly, there's a ton of them. There's a lot of issues in here. I'll look at just a couple to give you a sense. The first, this is composition analysis. This particular version of Flask that I'm using has some known vulnerabilities. And so Q has flagged that. I can come in and look at details. So we'll come in and it'll give me a nice description of the issue. It'll give me links for more reading if I want them. And then it's already, in this case, generated a fix. So Q can generate a fix. This isn't a terribly exciting one, right? We're just going to bump into the next minor version. Arguably, I probably should go to a later version even than this. But we want to make the least intrusive fix we can. That was composition analysis. Now this is an example of static analysis where it's come in and, in this case, found that hard-coded password that you probably saw early on. Again, gives me a nice description. Pretty self-explanatory here. I think we all know this is bad. And it's going through and it hasn't finished generating the fix yet, but it's working on generating that fix. It'll come back in a minute. And I know from prior examples, it's going to just externalize this as an environment variable so we can inject it at runtime using secrets manager, parameter store, or something like that. OK, so it's done doing its fix here. So you can see, right, it took that and suggests, let's externalize that, and we'll inject it at runtime. If I wanted to, I could hit explain, which would move this whole thing into chat. And I could talk to Q about, like, hey, how would I inject this at runtime? What services are available to me to do that? How would I configure them? In this case, I'll just merge it in. The rest of these findings here, you'll notice, are just examples of the large language model playing the role of peer reviewer and making suggestions about readability, maintainability, and other ways to improve my code. And so I won't go through all of those, but you can see all the ways that generative AI is really helpful here for both security scanning and just general recommendations. So at this point, I've finished my work, right? I'm feeling pretty confident. I'll go through and fix the rest of those issues, make sure that everything's good. I'm ready to go and commit this change. I'm ready to push this. And now we're going to change to the next phase of the software development lifecycle. And I'm also going to change personas. I'm going to move from the developer persona, and I'm going to shift now to the DevOps engineer that owns the DevSecOps tooling, that's responsible for the CI/CD pipeline. And their challenges are a little bit different, right? Their primary challenge is they're probably managing a ton of projects, and they don't really know a lot about the details of them. So there's some learning that they can do as part of this. In addition, if the developer's done a good job, they've already run all the security reviews, right? I just did that. But we know they don't always do that. So I also want to use the tools again in the pipeline as an enforcement point to make sure that all those issues are resolved before I continue. So we'll shift into the outer loop here, and I'll show you a couple examples. We first launched this capability in the DevSecOps tooling when we launched Q a year and a half or 2 years ago, originally in Code Catalyst, which is our DevSecOps tool. We then at reInvent in November, a couple months ago, announced this collaboration with GitLab. So I'll show you that one first. And for GitLab, what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I'm enforcing code quality so that if a developer forgets to do the thing that they said they were going to do, that it gets caught here. So I'm back in that Flask R application, and this time I'm looking at it in GitLab. And I'm just going to go and simulate one of those issues that we had before. So I'll come into the requirements file here. And what I want to do is I'll open this up, and I'll just edit right in GitLab. You should never do this, of course. Bad form. But I'm just going to come in here and hard code that known bad version of Flask again. Put this back in, as if the developer had forgotten to fix this before they committed it. And I'll commit that notice into a branch, into a feature one branch. So now I've got this in a branch, and I'm going to create a merge request. If you haven't worked with GitLab, you probably call this a PR and all other tools. They call it a merge request instead of a pull request. I call this demo. I should fill in a description, but I'm being lazy. And I'll submit that merge request. So think of this as I'm simulating a developer submitting a change. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in here and invoke Q. So I do a /Q, and you can see the same agents that we used in the IDE, testing, software development, review, are all available here. In this case, I'm going to run review, and I'll commit that. So this is just signaling to Q that I want it to run a code review. You could, of course, trigger this automatically so that every time a PR is submitted, a merge request is submitted, that this runs automatically. I'm just triggering it manually here. And you can see Q says, OK, I'll work on that, and I'll run the code review. I'll let you know when I'm done. And this takes about 60, 90 seconds for it to do this. It's actually spun up a container in AWS, cloned the project, is making the changes there. So it takes a little longer. I fast forwarded. But here's that same description that we saw in the IDE, right? That same detector is running here and coming through and saying, OK, I found these issues. Here are some links if you want to read more. I don't, so we'll just scroll down a little bit. And you can see that Q is now working on making a suggestion for how to fix this. So it's run the detector, and now it's finished doing the fix and said, OK, here's a fix to address this issue. Again, it's just bumping to the next minor version. This is a simple one. But this looks good, so I'll apply that, merge it into my code. OK, so that was an example in GitLab of running the enforcement of that code review to make sure that developers have done it. The next thing I want to do is we'll shift into GitHub this time. So again, GitLab was announced at reInvent back in November, reached GA about 2 months ago, maybe 6 weeks ago. That went to GA. Right around the same time, about a month ago, we announced the preview of GitHub. So all those same tools that you saw in GitLab have been built into GitHub. I could show you the same demo, right, where I do a code review in GitHub. We support that, of course. But what I'd rather do here is let's talk about how we can use the software development agent in these tools and question whether I actually ever needed to check that thing out to make this change in the first place. Do we still need a developer to make a change as trivial as going through and adding delete functionality? That was a really easy change. Could we just do that right in the DevSecOps tool? So for the GitHub example, I'll do exactly that. So again, back in the same application, this time we're looking at it in GitHub. This is that same Flask R app. Notice this time, though, I'm in the very beginning, right? This is the early stages so that I haven't fixed the security issue. I've still got that hard-coded password there up at the top of the file. This is the initial state before I made the changes. And if we come down, you can see the delete functionality isn't here. We haven't implemented that delete change yet. What I'm going to do this time is I'm just going to come into issues, and I'm going to add an issue in the backlog. Could be a bug. In this case, it's a feature request. And I'm going to say we want to add the ability to remove an entry. And in the description, just like I did before, I'll tell it that I want it to update the HTML, the SQL, and the code. This is still pretty weak. I should have a much longer user story built out here, but it's good enough for the demo. And note here, the same agents, right? I've got all of the agents that we've talked about are available. I will again manually trigger queue, but I could have this set up to automatically trigger on every commit. I'm sorry, on every creation of an issue in this case. And now Q has acknowledged that it's working on it and says, when I'm done, I'll just submit a PR. I'll go work on this entirely on my own autonomously. I'll submit a PR when I'm done. And now it has completed that work. So once again, this takes a while. This is not instantaneous. We cloned this into an environment in AWS and worked on it. It took about 6 minutes. But it's gone through and submitted this PR for me. We see that nice description at the top, just like we saw at the end of all the examples in the IDE. And we can see here, if we scroll down, it's actually running the security scan. So it will automatically run a security scan even on the code that it writes. And if we come and look at the PR, you can see all the changes. So you see the SQL change. That's the code written. Here's the change to the HTML. These should look really familiar. They're just the same things that we did in the IDE. It's even written the unit test. I didn't ask it to do that. I could have asked it to do the documentation and the unit tests, but it threw the unit tests in there for me. So really quickly here, we have now done all of this autonomously. There's still a human in the loop. I need to review the PR, but I've taken a lot of the load for these simple tasks off of the developer, so it's not their responsibility anymore. Right? Imagine what you could do with your backlog of all the small issues and things that are being reported, the insignificant feature requests that users are requesting, if you could just start handing these off to generative AI right in the DevSecOps tool, and do a lot of them in parallel, potentially. So before I turn this back over to Daniel, I just want to talk for a moment about sort of the art of what's really possible here. So we publish a lot of benchmarks for Q Developer about how it's performing. And we're generally right at the top or very near the top, depending on how long ago we ran one of these, for both SWE bench and SWT bench. So SWT is a benchmark for writing unit tests. SWE bench is a benchmark for resolving issues. In this case, we are solving about 66% of real-world issues reported against real-world open source Python projects that are available in GitHub. Yep. These are well-written, but generally, these numbers suggest that assuming you have well-written issues in your backlog, you could start to hand off 2/3 of the noise to Q and let it do that. So your developers are focusing on the really important stuff, and you're starting to just offload a lot of this junk to Gen AI to take care of for you. Okay. And with that, I will turn this back over to Daniel to pick it up from here.
Thank you, Brian. Cool, so we really saw how Q can help us at the beginning, planning, designing, threat modeling. Then we saw how we can use Q in order to accelerate development, run security next to our developers. We saw we can integrate it with our pipelines to make sure we have governance across different applications and projects. Now we have our application deployed. In the next section, we're going to discuss about how we're going to run SecOps with Amazon Q. And this scenario is a bit complicated, complex, intentionally. We have a security engineer that needs to run a complicated security investigation. In our scenario, it's going to be Kubernetes environment, Amazon EKS. So how we can really use Q, how we can really streamline, and how Q can help our incident responder, our SecOps engineer, to run such operation. So the demo will start with a guard duty alert. Guard duty is our threat detection service. A managed service, you can enable it with a couple of clicks, and you will get alerts when something bad happens in your environment. So we can see here that we got a suspicious activity about a crypto miner. All right? I can read it. I can try, as a security engineer, try to understand how to start the investigation, how to now connect to my Kubernetes cluster, and maybe work with a playbook in order to try to remediate it, gather the forensics, triage, etc. But I'm going to use Q. So I will start by just copying some details from the finding. Of course, we can automate that, but this process for the demo is manual. So I'm going to just copy the finding ID and the fact this is a crypto mining security event. And I'm going to jump into the Q into the CLI. Now, in my environment here, I started Q with permissions to my environment. And I also trust Q to run actions against my environment without my approval. Don't do it in a production environment. This is just a demo, just for this demonstration. I also have my playbooks predefined. So I have playbooks with different security incidents and instructions based on my organization on how to handle a security event when the crypto mining comes up. Again, it might be different in your org or based on a different project, based on sensitivity, etc. And I'm going to just ask you, hey, Q, I have this crypto mining event. This is the finding ID. This is the guard duty detector ID. This is the region. I have some playbooks here. Help me to run the relevant commands in order to start with this investigation. So Q will start again by fetching the playbook. So I have the playbooks there. Try to understand which playbook is relevant for this specific scenario. And we'll read and fetch the instructions from there. So this might take a couple of moments. Afterwards, Q going to start with the investigation. Now, a lot of things going to happen now. We'll try to follow up with what happens on the screen. But Q will start to understand what is the vulnerable pod that was the source for this alert. Start to understand the environment, which other pods I have in the namespace, how many namespaces I have there. We'll identify the binary that was used to get the crypto mining, get logs from the specific pod, and understand exactly which operations made there. Try to understand how this malicious pod even created from the beginning. So you go to the service account, and he found that a service account is attached to another pod, which is a legitimate application that probably is vulnerable, and our external unauthorized user got from there. So there are a lot of different phases of the investigation that Q just doing automatically for me. He also configured the kubectl, the Kubernetes environment, and just ran actions against both my AWS environment and my Kubernetes environment, and really got a better picture of what happened. After a couple of minutes, Q has a better picture. You understand hey, we have this vulnerable app that somehow was exposed to the internet and probably was the root cause. This app created the crypto miner pod. So we know what happened. We know there is a service account that was used. Next steps will be containment. All right, so Q will follow with the relevant playbook that can be used for the containment operation. And he's again reading the relevant playbooks, again fetching the information. And he will start with stopping the bleeding. He would like to run different commands. So the first one would be, can I? So Q is checking if he really can use the service account to create pods, and the answer is yes. So he would like to revoke the permissions of the service account. Again, don't do it in production. You might break your application. But this is what the playbook says, and this is the solution for this demo. So after Q really identified the relevant service account, he revokes the permissions there. He will also make sure that the service account cannot be used anymore in order to run any crypto mining or create any pods in my environment. And he will also continue with the containment steps that I have there. So some of them would be to delete the crypto miner. So we would like to delete it and making sure we're not keeping increasing costs on the workload by running those crypto miners. Q would also collect relevant logs information from the relevant pods. I will also run network isolation, so you can see now that I created a network policy that just isolate incoming and outgoing connectivity into the affected pods to make sure that we don't have any connectivity externally. And we're applying them only to the affected pods that Q identified in the beginning. So we're not of course, applying them to all of the pods, only to the specific affected pods with labeling that we created using Q. All right, so we really used Q to start the investigation. We understood what happened. We ran the containment. We stopped the bleeding. We stopped the crypto mining operations. The next step would be to generate a report, right? We want to share with our management what exactly happened and which steps has been taken. So Q created for me here already the timeline and what are the IOCs that were relevant to this event, and what was the affected resources, the specific details that I can eventually maybe take and like run across my environment to try to identify any similar activity that maybe I have in other environments. And the next step, Q will also generate for me like an executive summary, which will include, again, like this information and others, for example, like which steps Q took exactly, and which remediation plan it has, which maybe long-term plan I have that I have to implement in my environment, and what was the suspected root cause. So we can see like a lot of information and data that has been generated by Q. Again, all has been done by Markdown files, playbooks, and automated integration into the AWS environment and also the Kubernetes environment. So I really hope this was useful, and you can think about ideas about how really Q can help you to streamline SecOps operations. So after the security event, we handle that. Application is keep running there. But we might have like a new 0 day. We might have a new security requirements to upgrade the code. The security team comes to development team, hey, this Java version is outdated. You need to upgrade it. It's not that easy. We have like multiple dependencies. The code is huge. We need to start like understand what's going to be the impact. So we can do it manually, or we can use Q for that kind of operation. So in this scenario, we have our developer that has legacy code and really learn how to use Amazon Q developer in order to upgrade and mitigate the risk and answer the security team that bothering him with this specific outdated application. So in this case, we have a Java app. As you can see, like it's a Java app on version 8. And I'm going to use the transform capability with Amazon Q within the IDE. I'm going to ask him, hey, I want to upgrade version 8 to version 21. So Q will start and analyze my, will ask me first how I want it, if I want to create unit tests. In this case, I don't. But it will start and analyze my project directory. And this can take a couple of minutes. And then like a couple of minutes later, we can see that Q like starting like to create like a transform plan for me. So basically, again, scanning the code repository, trying to understand what's need to be upgraded, and generating a detailed markdown plan with what I need to do. So I can see like what I need to refactor exactly, which files need to be changed, which files need to be deprecated, which dependencies need to be upgraded, and to which versions. So it really gives me like a detailed transform plan that I can use and implement in order to make this upgrade challenging operation in a more efficient way. And then also like get the diffs. And again, this is like, this might take a couple of minutes as well. But in the end, Q will generate for me the new up-to-date code repository, my new code base, sorry. That will include the upgraded code, and I can also dive deep and see exactly which changes has been made, what's the diff for each file in my project. I can see that in this case, I successfully really upgraded Java version 8 into 21 very easily. All right, so we saw really the transform capability. This is just an example. There are a lot of like different solutions and operations that you can use the transform, and it supports other programming languages besides Java as well. We have here a customer quote. We have Deloitte that implemented Amazon Q Developer in their environment, and they saw 40% increase in development speed, 70% increase in testing, decrease in testing, and really like better code quality. So if you want, you should give Amazon Q Developer a try, and maybe you can try to run some of the examples that we showed you today on your environments. Just to summarize what we discussed, we started from the plan and design, and we really saw how Q can help you to align your security requirements early on in the software development lifecycle, integrating with your wiki pages, running threat analysis, helping your developers and your security teams to work better together. Then we saw how really Q can work alongside of your development teams and help them to develop faster and more secure. With the ongoing security scans on the IDE, with the code suggestions, with the review option that can run a security scan across the whole project. This is really powerful. Then we experiment how Q can be integrated with your pipeline, right, inside of your pipeline. So we can use the GitLab, and include Q there, run, again, automated reviews, run maybe automated code generation, and work backwards from PFRs or any security requirements that you have inside of the pipeline. And then we saw how Q can also help security experts, security engineers to just run operations. The example was around incident response, but it can be just reviewing the environment or running CLI commands. Q can really help you to be more productive for your operations in the environment. In the end, we saw how Q can really help you to make transformation, and how you can use Q really to take a vulnerable, a deprecated code, and in an automated way created a plan and transforming the code with the relevant changes. I hope this session was valuable for you. I will ask you to spend 1 minute on filling out the survey, and we're going to be around here if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you.